the panel. We are too short today. Kamilara is coming back on Saturday, then you're leaving. Yeah, and Karina is not here today either. She's unfortunately a bit ill from the Norwegian weather, I guess. But she's still giving her workshops for the one that are there. So I'm curious to kind of continue a bit about the topics that we talked about, and I'm curious to talk about these skills of the actor and so on in contemporary theater art, and also connected to, I mean, we are all pedagogues and you are all somehow actors or acting students. So I'm not sure precisely where I want to start, but I think, okay, so I have a hypothesis here. You can create an acting training on a normative basis or on a descriptive. Means you can look at what exists of theater and you try to make a training that fit for that. Okay? Or you have an idea what is acting, what acting should be, and you try to make a training based on that. I'm sure that all of you would say that we are trying to work with actors so they fit for what exists in the theater field somehow. But there is always, I guess, some sort of idea, some idea of what actors should be that you all carry with you, one way or the other, some ideal, and that somehow also get into the training. Do you think that am I right or am I very wrong? Yes.
Since I'm the only woman today, I'll start. I think there's a third way.
Okay, what's the third?
Which is exploring, because many of us who teach acting have some experience in acting, and I think that it's not necessary. Well, of course, you also. I don't know if I look at what's going on and try to educate someone that can fit into that or can get work. I mean, I'm trying to explore from being part of what's going on, explore also through myself and my own curiosity, explore ways through, like Ture was saying, you know, trying to figure out what goes on in society, try to respond, you know, to politics, sociology and philosophy, and simply to explore and see on the floor what I think works or not. Of course, I also have an idea of what I like to see on stage, what kind of representation.
And I'm a bit curious about what that is.
For me?
Yes, for all of you.
Should I say it?
Yeah. Anyone that.
I mean, I'm personally interested in. Oh, it's so hard to put words because words frame everything. But some kind of real, which I think probably everyone is looking for. Real, which means for me that there is a person on stage talking to people in the auditorium, and that's it. There's no difference.
So you want to see the person?
Yeah, I want to see the person. I want the person to just be and do things and talk and say things.
Is that aesthetical or ideological?
I guess it becomes an aesthetic as well. Yeah, sure, for sure. But you can put layers on that. You can put a lot of theatrical layers on that, like Baroque costumes and strange movements and singing and whatever. Okay. But it's still, you know, it's still high.
Okay, good. Because what I'm trying to do is kind of to make you be also to reveal somehow your preferences. Because what I feel that we kind of act like that we don't have preferences. For instance, I'm sure that every acting teacher in the world would agree that exploring is important. But so what I'm curious about then, what kind of exploring, or what is your preferences? Anyone else want to reveal your preferences?
I raised the hand. I don't know, is this mic for use or is
it's in use.
set in here?
It's in use.
has been here the whole, all the
It's
sessions.
only for you.
Towards it.
It's for you. It's a piece of the sonography.
Now I can use it.
But we don't need to talk so close to the mic.
No,
okay?
but a little bit. Let's test. Is this fine? Great. Because I raised my hand with Camilla, and this was a déjà vu because it exactly happened yesterday. She said what I was about to say. So but there is a third. No, it's great. It's great. But I think too that there's a third way that we should find ways in the education, in the theater education, acting education, that affects the field, that changes the field, that even we don't know who are the pedagogues, what they can be, but what we can create in those years we are working in the schools with the students, and what they can bring both to us and then afterwards to the field. And it's a responsibility, actually. I think it's absolutely not a way to nourish the field in that way, that they need a special kind of actors or directors or whatever. We should absolutely always think in this perspective, I think.
So, if I understand you correctly, then acting training, directing training, and so on are changing the field, and you should be aware of it, and you should actually somehow use it in a productive way.
Yeah, that is what I think. It's, of course, it's not easy to describe what it could be. But then,
well, you also can say something about your preferences, maybe?
preferences on what I want to see or what?
What interests you when you see an actor on stage?
What interests me, if it interests me, it interests me. If it's not interesting, it's boring, and it's boring.
But have you discovered?
It's very simple. If there is something that wakes me up, or what is here going on, and it's not a question of style, and it's not a question of how the performance, even though the most traditional theater performances can be interesting and can be kind of touching. And then it's sometimes really hard to describe what is in this performance. Why isn't it interesting for me? And of course, it's a very subjective way to look at it. So, but it's a little bit like you're saying. There's someone, or there's a group of people, or there's a happening in action that attaches you. And I don't know how we create the theater, but some way it's a question about being honest on what you're doing. And honesty and authenticity are really difficult words in this field of fiction and pretender and things like that. So I don't know if they're good to use, but of course if you're honest to your art, it should be something that interests, and you want to tell something that you feel is important for the people to know, and you find a way and an expression to do it. Probably something like that.
Okay, you were saying that the schools should change the field. I think the field is changing itself. And of course, a school in one sense is part of the field, but a school is not a theater. The word school means actually time free from work. That's the definition of skola. So it gives the time and space for the people that are in there to learn to know themselves, which is kind of exploring, and also get the skills, and get the skills to know other skills when they are outside this skola, the school. I think it was very interesting what you said yesterday, Ville, that when your school kind of collapsed, or it became chaos. And the students that were there were learning maybe more, not at least less, than when there were really a structure. And this is a real hard balance. How active should we be? How should we impose our views on it? Of course we do it indirectly, but it's another profession to be a pedagogue or a teacher compared to a director, though they are interlinked, of course.
Gianluca, do you impose some ideas about what acting is in your students?
Yeah, of course. Yes. But I think it's inevitable. And I think it would be also, I will also be sort of destructive not to start from a point of passion. This is a life of passion. So there is an interest in what you do. I think it's very important to start from there. That's why I said I always start my classes from a contract. Here we work with this. And this is not the only thing in the world, but with me we explore this problem. And then you make your own conclusions. But what I can say is that what I would like to take it more from a neurobiological point of view, to get back to also what the question I gave to you, which is, I can just say what I try to do, which is to sort of create a way of working where you can sort of work on the way the body organizes itself in reality. So we have, since we have to survive, and by surviving we have to try to make life predictable. So a lot of our time goes actually in creating routines. And routines, what they do, they make you sort of less deaf to a lot of signals that comes to you. I sit every morning to the same bus, and I more or less sit in the same places, and I create routines. I go home and I turn on the light with the same hand. I mean, I have a lot of routines, right? I think routines, as for an actor, are dangerous. So in order to keep you sort of awake, to keep you in the position of being able to learn what you have to learn according to the concrete artistic problem you will work with, then you have to sort of constantly train your body from a neurobiological point of view to give shocks to the nerve systems, so that the nerve system is constantly in a reorganization modus, which is very sort of typical of kids, right? The kids, they learn, they grow, there are always constantly changes, and they create experiences to learn. The kid that needs to be able to walk finds a way to play so that can sort of put the eyes to the horizon. Otherwise, if you don't put your eyes to the horizon, you will not be able to walk. So you create experiences so that you can sort of learn, right? So I try to frame exercises where sort of the people have to confront themselves, feel a sort of discomfort, and all the time there's a gap between what I understand and what's happening with my body, so that in this gap there's a sort of sharpness.
So is it then the break of the routine on the ability to learn new strategies that is for you the fundamental thing in acting?
Yeah, it's the strategies I use. So I create exercises that are not supposed, they don't result in anything.
Okay.
You can't be good in this exercise. You just have to do it again and again and again and again. And every time you do it, I make small variations. I give you a small example and I stop. If you go to IKEA, okay, take IKEA, right? IKEA is exactly the same almost everywhere, but there are some small differences. So if you take a person and you send this person to IKEA in Oslo every day, and he goes around IKEA every day for 30 days. And then you take this person, you put him on a plane, and you send him to Shanghai, into the IKEA of Shanghai to do the same things, probably this person will collapse and have a pain attack, because there's a level of familiarity, but at the same time there's something off. And so your body doesn't know how to talk interpret this information. So there is a sort of biological reorganization. That's what I'm interested in, to keep the people a way.
We're going to go closer into how you actually do it on Saturday. But this idea about acting, that the break or routine, the ability to learn new stuff as a foundation. Tore, do you want to react on that?
Yes, I have talked a lot already about this, so perhaps I should be short now. But yes, the ability to be able to keep up the ability to learn and to find the frames, because I don't think that's just an idealistic question. It's also a question of the structure of education, the space, the time, you know, the way to organize it. And I think it's a very important thing that also school means a free from job, so, because again, like I said, I think everybody knows that it's important to learn, the ability to learn more, or to be open. But the structure of this life makes that difficult. So that is the starting point with education, I think. And then again, I think also it's time to, you know what I like with the concept of étude, coming from the classical music into theatre, and I think we should use that word, to downscale a problem into a highly subjective task, which should be subjective in that way that you should, you know, to compare two experiences. One, as a young musician, sitting when you go to a concert, let's say you are 12 years old, listen to a wonderful piano player, and it's something at stake. And the first thing was, how can I reach that? What is it? That's several questions going on. Why do I like this? What can I do? How can I get to know him? Or what, you know, the whole research thing there, to keep that ability. I have exactly the same thing with Gandolfini. I have spent hours and hours and hours trying to find out, what does he do? How do he work? What was the relation between, what did he do by Sanford Meisner, and what did he do in the bar in New York, in the dialogues? You know, it's the same thing, this curiosity. And then try to downscale some etudes, which should be highly individual for each of you. So search for your own etudes and bring it into the education, because I think also the meeting point here, when in the study, is always experimenting. It's something at stake, something can happen. Of course I will bring in my own experiences. Of course I will try to force them on you, so to say, but it should be the dialectical meeting point where new abilities, new possibilities, new things occur.
Billy, you wanted to reply?
Yeah, there are so many things now, but I actually don't understand at all this separation. Free from job in the school, and then you go out to the field and you're in job. I just don't get it, because as artists, in a way, I understand we have a private life, and I try to have a separation somewhere because it's very healthy for you. But on the other hand, I'm working all the time. I don't find a place where I am free from job. I think I started to work actually the day when I get applied to the theater academy, and it's been like that. And I absolutely think that the theater academies are, and theater schools are part of the field, because there are made works of art, and they absolutely are part of that field. So it's not, I can't see the separation. And of course I understand this, that you have to consider yourself doing things and learn, and then you have the job and as the performance for whatever you're doing. But every time I enter a stage as an actor, I try to learn the piece I'm in. So it's a learning process all the time. So I can't separate these things actually at
should we if this is a different topic, because it seems like all of them want to reply. So short replies before you get.
I have my day tomorrow.
Yeah, you will have also. Tore first.
Yes, you know, I see what you mean, Bella, but again, yes, the school is part of the field, and then I guess you mean the OIAF field of theatre.
Yes.
But still, it's a specific area of this field. And with this
specific.
Yes, it could. It
It's
does.
usually specific. The free group is specific.
Yes, of course, and have different
Also
qualities.
is
Yes.
specific.
I think it's very easy to answer that because of course different institutions, different educations will occur or occupy different places in the field, but on their premises. And this discussion is about what premises should be there, so to say. And again, of course, doing a workshop here, being a master student here, is a completely different structural situation than being on a main stage in Norway with a huge system, the economical situation, and it will penetrate a lot of what is going on in you as an actor, in you as a director, and you should be aware of the different gravities in the different path of the field. You know, so that's, and to search for which possibilities we have here in these rooms during 2 years or 5 years, because they are qualities in the field, but on their own premises, and also to learn to keep these, to learn to handle some of the pressures outside but to say that the whole life is the same as going to a study or being in this school would be not only non-realistic, it would be almost a lie.
Camilla and Per also short replies. Okay. Unnskyld.
That's okay. That's okay. We're pretty much alike, I guess. No, I mean, you basically said a lot of what I was thinking, but I think it's both. I mean, yes, there is a continuation. It's a life as an artist which starts as soon as you start studying this field, and which hopefully continues if you have this curiosity we've been talking about. But I do also think there is a difference, which is that when you first entered into the academy, which is already not so easy, when you're inside there, you have a certain freedom to fail, which is quite different when you enter out of it for most people, because there's a different economical situation within a working life, where it's much more dangerous to fail, even if you're in a free, so-called, in our country, free group, or working in an institution. And I can see it in our students. I mean, they're so brave. The best artworks I see happens in the academy. But when they come out, of course, they're much more vulnerable and scared to fail, so they don't take as much artistic chances, actually, which is a pity, but that's, that's the reality of the world we live in, and you have to learn to cope with that too.
Just short remark, since I feel also students are also scared to fail very often. It also seems to be a kind of
disease of our society. Come on.
Or it's a part of being a human being. We want to belong, so if we fail, we are scared not to belong any longer. So maybe it's that.
At least in the Western.
I think what I meant with the school and free and is what has been said here. You don't have to fight for the money or sending out your CVs or meeting people or applying for grants or whatever. So what's that? But I also want to say a little about routines, and it's also dangerous, I think, to say that routines are dangerous. And Carolina said that the first day here, the importance for the actor to go by herself or together, maybe someone, and do the routines. And I think that goes for all creative works. Some years it was a scientist in chemistry that got the Nobel Prize. I don't remember his name. I think it was in chemistry. And they asked, and he was working in some university or research center, and what are you doing? Well, the first thing we do in the morning, we go to our playroom. So they had a playroom, they had built up a playroom where they could do whatever they wanted. Of course with computers and whatever they wanted. But then they had to go into the laboratory, and they had to do their routines. They had to check out all the things that were going on, and they had to put all the notes and statistics and all that. And then they go back to the playroom. So it's this going back and forth, and I think that's important to teach or make students aware of, that the routines are important, and what Karina said the first day. And I think we're lacking that a little. If I'm just original and happy and passionate, it will work, and that's not true.
No, but I have to reply to this. I'm sorry, because when I'm talking about no, but we're talking. Yes, but you steal time if you let me talk. Jesus. What I'm talking about is the relationship between familiarity and break of the routine. So, for example, like in Steiner education, in the kindergarten, you have one game for the week. Okay, so the kids are always playing the same game. And what happens is that when you repeat and repeat the same game, after a while you give up to the game, so you start to trust, so you start to play in a different way, because the familiarity makes you sort of understand that you're not going to win anything when there's not an outcome, right? So you have the repetition is very important. But the repetition combined with small break of the routines, inside of the repetition they create narrow biological gaps. The narrow biological gaps, they're not intellectual, they are in your body, so they force your body to do a sort of constant reorganization within familiarity. And this is a sort of very delicate balance, but it keeps you sort of, it trains you to do a deeper level to stay awake, to be receptive to what's happening to you. You know, this is so. I just have to precise that. But you didn't ask me what was my because you said about this thing about the aesthetical thing and preferences. You didn't let me say that. I can say that.
You really want to say?
I really want.
What I just want to throw in is the audience. Okay, I really miss you kind of a bit here, because also there is a very interesting audience. You're actors, you're students, you're at least 2 deans in the audience, and a lot of pedagogues. So. But we're going to come back to your preferences.
I'm just wondering, I'm a designer, not an actor. And when you talk about aesthetics, in which way are you talking about aesthetics? Is it visual? Is it the same way as I talk about aesthetics, or is it an acting thing?
What do we talk about when we talk about aesthetics?
Yes, that's the question.
What does aesthetics mean?
Yes. Form.
Which can be 3-dimensional.
Okay.
For me, it would be all sorts of contracts being made on stage between the actors, the actor herself, and with the audience.
So we're not talking about a visual aesthetic. We're talking about something.
Not only.
Huh?
Not only.
Not only. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering when we were talking about how the school was good for failing, a place to fail. And Øystein said that his experience is that a lot of students are afraid to fail in school. And I would like to ask if, Jean-Luc said that it's a disease of our society and then just dropped it, but I would like to ask if it could be a disease of the structure of the school.
Interesting. Could it be a
Why don't
disease?
you guys answer that?
Yeah. Does anybody has an answer?
Various academies.
Any students of any whatever institution wants to? Yeah. Two of you.
Yesterday and the day before, I think we also touched the subject, and it's also always, the panel always answers by asking lots of questions. What is good? What is talent? What is theater? And a little bit frustrating in the end when it's like just what is everything? Because I think you all, because you did try to answer yesterday, you all, like the fellesnämnaren for what you're all saying is presence, in some way or the other. And like Jean-Luc mentioned, like breaking the routines is a way of making you more present on the stage, and wanting to communicate something, or like you said, wanting to say something to the audience. It all boils down to like a form of presence, and that's something that we practice on in different ways at acting school, and that's something that we want to achieve. And I think it would be to lie to say that, oh no, that's not something you have to achieve, being present on stage or being as present as possible. It just annoys me a little bit when it's like, no, there is no good acting, there is no talent, because I think we all know if you're on stage and you're not present at all, you're just shut off, that makes you worse of an actor. And in acting school, that goes for the same. So, of course, we have some things that we want to achieve. And of course, we don't want to fail in achieving them. And that's not a bad thing.
Good point. I think for me personally, I think presence is not precise enough though. We can even be more precise. You want to have answer as well?
Yeah, I think there's a problem that we speak so much about what, but we don't speak about how. And that's in a lot of this debate, and in a lot of institutions you talk about, what we're looking for, or that we want to explore, but I don't know how you want to explore, Camilla, or I don't know.
Workshop.
Yeah, of course I will. I can't because I'm in a different workshop. But thing is, I'm just saying that I think in a lot of institutions and in a lot of it's not just you, it's all of you. There's a lot of what, and it creates a distance between the students and the teachers, I find. But if you're able to keep that honesty larger of how do we want to do this, obviously there's you're afraid to fail as well, because there are these, as you said, you used to call it the sales production here at the school. There's not a more scary word than selling yourself. You know what I mean? So the institution has to be aware of that sort of rhetoric as well, I believe.
Somebody else want to answer it? We are now in answering the question how to get rid of or fear for being in an institution.
I'm just going to say that I think we live in a time where we're infested with hows and how we do things, and for a long time religion has offered us this, and now neuroscience is claiming to know the key to the self, and in the creative world there's a bunch of theater actors, trainers, mentors who tell us acting is heroic, or acting is a healing thing, or whatever. But I'm thinking that we're in a time where we're asking questions of why we're doing theater and why we're enacting. And I keep thinking about a film called The Act of Killing, where the director Joshua Oppenheimer said that he's not a documentarist filming people as a fly on the wall, but he's using the very problem of people trying to dramatize themselves as the very key to finding out who they are in the moment. So I guess I'm saying that acting can also be a platform of we don't know what the fuck we're doing, and that is a premise of work. I think I go to the theater not to see myself or even a mirror, because there's so many places who can offer me that, but I'm trying to go to the theater to see perhaps like a shattered mirror, and see someone daring to recode and recombine images of a self that hasn't been yet made. So therefore, to make that platform, I don't think it's useful to even come up with solutions. It's just, yeah. ...
Okay, I think we had another one short reply.
Very short. To this question. I'm not in the school, but I think that the problem is that we're talking about the field, that when you come to the school, you're already in the field. In a sense, because it's so public, this school, that you are already, if you are failing, you already have huge consequences. I think a lot of people feel that that it's a consequence of failing here is not getting work later.
It's probably a bit different on different schools though, I guess. Some schools are maybe more protected toward it. I think we have a student here that also want to answer to the question about fear and institutions, education institutions.
I just wanted to say that you know, you do get graded, and it's easy to put the blame on the institution and teachers, but I think it's very individually and mentally. If you want to choose to, because we live in a society where you always have to be the best. But if you look at it in another way, that if you dare to fail, you're going to get better, then I think then maybe that's a good way to do it. That's just the way I see it, though.
Can you pass the mics over there? We have 3 short, because we both, what is comment? Comment, yeah, okay, so remember these are comments, okay, and they should be short. So we have 3 there, okay, we're gonna take them, and then I wanna, and 1 there, and then I wanna go back to the panel.
Okay, for me, when I went to theater school, I think the persons or the people I learned most from, and I felt that I could be myself and explore, was with the people with a direction, a strong artistic thought where you explore together with the teacher, and an inspiring person. An inspiring person that is really interested in what he or she is doing, and then I get inspired, and of course later on I can go home and I can be like, did I like it, did I not like it, I don't know, and I can choose. But if it's always like, for me it was, if it's always like, what do you think about this, or all this thinking in class, it's really hard to, you know, learn something, to do practical, like now we do this, you know, and afterwards you can like, did I like it, I don't know, but I was working. I was working, and it was so fun, and I lost myself in it. I was playing like a child. And then you learn, and yeah.
I would just like to specify this question. I was asking you in the panel, are there any concrete things, not philosophical, but concrete things you do in your schools to help the students not be afraid of failing?
Okay, great. We're going to go back to the panel, and you're going to have the possibility to answer short and clear on this question, all of you, if you want to, okay? But I want short answers.
Short answer to this. We wrote the new student plan of study. It was a huge battle on trying to sort of reduce the showings. I'm probably the first one in the history of the theater school that did the grundtrening without having a visning. This is for me a concrete thing, and also try to problematize who comes to watch what. It's hard, and it's a lot of layers, economical structures, colleagues, blah 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 blah. But we try. We'll see.
Yes, I think because if you have this showing in the end, you can call it whatever you want, but it's the premiere, nonetheless. And to take that out, another strategy which we tried was to move the context of a production or a workshop out of this school to another town, like we did. We moved it to Bergen, to another audience, to another rooms, so that we don't have this, you know, as part of the field, the same people all over again coming to see these things. To break with the structure of the field. You see what I mean? To take a workshop out, to skip the visning, the presentation. So very clear-cut strategies will be highly possible. But also to discuss this with you, to say, how can we create rooms where these kinds of stress situations will not be so present? How can we together create this? Because also to asking that question is also part of the solution.
Somebody else, or you wanna reply on this? Try to keep it short, please.
Yeah, of course it is. It's a question about structures. I think we need to play like children more and help each other to do that, and also tell each other that we're all scared. I'm scared as a teacher when I started a workshop here. Of course it was fear, maybe I fail. And that's human, because I don't want to leave here alone and, oh, I failed. That's very human, and that we can share that. And that's not a question about an institution and individuals, it's individuals. So that's very human to be afraid, and that's also a way of being creative. It's a good book about creativity out. It's called The Courage to Create. It takes courage, and we can help each other to be brave.
Yes, I think it has a lot to do how we talk together in the rehearsal or training room, which involves, you know, showing that we're all vulnerable and it's very normal to fail, and we will do it all the time. And the other thing that happens at the NTA is also that we don't show students' work until the second year, and we are careful with what is shown to the public and not. I think NTA has also been able to avoid some of the pressure that possibly students at KEO experience, because we've been in the periphery and a lot of people think it's very far to go to Fredrikstad, so we don't get all this pressure actually. And then when we do come here with a graduation show, we call it a graduation show, it's not a cell something. But of course it's something you always have to work on. And I would like to answer this how. I experience from working in a teaching institution that students want to know how. But we work with art, and there is no how. You have to explore your own how, I think. We can suggest many different hows and ways, and of course you always teach from your own experience and interests, and you have to be clear about that, and that there are many other ways, but there is no one answer to that, I think.
Okay, Wille, short as well? I try. Because about failing, I've given up totally the word fail. I don't want nobody to fail. I don't want to fail myself. I think it's something very kind of a hypocrisy over this thing of failing. Who wants to fail? Fuck. In my second round at the Theatre Academy as a pedagogue in the 90s, there was a big encouragement to push the students to fail. You have to have the courage to fail. You have to, what we are talking of. And I was wondering, what is actually this? I'm myself also saying to them, what is going on? Then I tested it. I thought I had an opportunity to test it. Okay, now I will fail. I had written an article in a book, and when it was published, I was asked to perform something in the at the publishing of the book, something for 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, I think, now I will fail. So I picked up some Shakespeare, and okay, in English it's harder, so I take it in English. And then I didn't rehearse almost at all. I didn't have any pattern. I thought I will do something perhaps with my shoes. And then one day, I of course tested some of the text, so I had some idea of the text and the situation. I don't remember even from which play it was or whatever. About one day before this performance, I got in real panic. And I tried to kind of figure out what am I going into. And then was the performance, and I don't remember anything of the performance. I remember something I did with my shoes. I had some text and something I just made up in the situation. It was about to be 5 minutes, but I think it was 3 or 4 minutes. And the rector asked afterwards, what
was that? Oh, it was my performance, and I was so ashamed, really ashamed. And actually, this happened sometime in the late 90s or middle 90s. It took me some 15 years. I couldn't tell it to people. I experiment. Because I was so ashamed. And I went into, now I will fail. And then after this experiment, oh, I won't have any more myself with these kind of experiments, and I won't push any students to failure. Try to be successful, try to be good, try to be brave, courage, experiment, explore, find things, go to wherever you find interesting. Try not to be kind of only on your comfort zone, but comfort zone is quite good. Yes.
Okay.
And if you're in your comfort zone, you can jump from there somewhere and find things.
We are starting to get out of time again here. It's very lonely that you always want to engage in the end. But I think I want to do a short round in the audience because there is some very eager hands here, but please try to keep it short. We have two up here. Leonard first, and then we have three down here, and then we have one down there. And you guys, you put up your hand recently, didn't you? So I'm not sure if I'm gonna. We'll see how long this uses. Okay.
I'm an actor and I'm a pedagogue, and I think that to be an actor, a successful actor or an effective actor, is on some level an expression of power. And as a pedagogue, I think it's important to empower my students so that they can come to the work fully, freely, and not be afraid of failure. And that failure is also not a problem. I mean, I also work with clown, and this connection to Lecoq with clown is the fundamental point is a failure. To come from that place of failure and what's there after the failure. And so there's something to learn from a failure, and then we're also talking about being artists and creating. I mean, what is failure there? I mean, if you're doing something and you're creative, then are you failing? I mean, maybe people don't like it, but still you have created something, and there's a power in that. So I think that to answer your question is to, as a pedagogue, to empower the student towards a way to create. And I think that how is a very important question, And yes, there are many hows, but it's, I work with Michael Chekhov, and he says that is the mystery of art, and that we are creative artists, and the how is the most important question that we have to bring. So we have to open that up to the actors, the students, to find out where the what is. The what is important, but the how is more important for the artist, for the act of creation.
Thank you.
For me, it's a problem when you say that it's good for the students not to meet the audience when we are in school, because it's like if you're afraid to deal with that fear, you have to meet the audience. And if theater is like, if we as actors, our job is to meet the audience in our time, in where we live, we have to meet them. And I also think we should do this in school and not try to protect.
Yeah, but
with not
just a very short reply. But it's a sort of we talk for oppositions. I say that we try to sort of reduce the showings, and that is about showing, not showing. It's about the progression. It's about problematizing. I said when there is a showing, let's problematize who is coming and where, so that there is a progression.
But I just talk about my experience in my school when I felt that they were protecting us from it, instead of like, okay, just go out there and do it, and meet the fear. That's my experience. So it's only.
I think it's very important that we start to talk about, like there is a sort of do not sort of work with this opposition. This excludes the other, because then it's a very difficult way of talking. It's important to sort of understand, and that's why I made the example about the kunstnerisk self, or the artistic self, because I think it's about other. So when you put up a play and there's an artistic self, you work between artistic selves to create the product, then you meet an audience to share and to interact together around this topic. Or are you in a training room where you're sort of developing the artistic self, then it's another room. It's different roles, different goals, different aspects, different rooms.
Taking the microphone.
One short thing, because I want to say about loss of control. I think this is important, not failure, but loss of control. And I think loss of control is the one thing I like to see in an actor. And for me, this is presence. And it was Per, you said yesterday, the relation between structure and chaos. And this is for me to see a human being movement towards loss of control. That's very interesting.
The next is Jesper.
Me? Oh, that was a long. It was. Just one brief. Okay, no, I'll take it after.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the fear thing that you said, the loss of control, because I feel like the fear is so much in our head, you know. And one concrete thing in the workshop of Carolina, it was so interesting to see that most of us are in our heads all the time, and to see the transformation when you move out of your head and into your body, and you do these routines that she does. And when you reach the point of complete exhaustion, at the end, when you keep working with your text all the time, and then you see that when you're so tired and you don't know what to do anymore, you don't continue with the same thing. You don't repeat the text in the same way, so you lose control. And then you see these amazing opportunities in the text that the body actually creates, and it's so interesting. So I don't know the techniques that you work on in this school, but it's so interesting to move out of the head and into the body, and in that way maybe lose the fear and lose control. Yeah.
Paulina, you want your comment? Okay, so go back to you.
Maybe it will sound a little bit like a discourse from the topic, but I am really thinking that maybe when we talk about all those problems and the questions, maybe we forget one. I think a crucial thing where all these people from institutions go after the school. And if we are talking really within the frame of the theater as a house with a stage, and then if we are talking about how education should prepare or not the best person who will succeed and who will become sort of the main one, are we talking about the one who will stand in the middle of the National Theatre stage and say these important texts and everything? But I just want to say that within these terms, maybe there are so many other options to go after the education, after the school. And maybe if I was educating as an actor, maybe I can be a super social worker, gain knowledge, which is very physical and understandable, come back to theater again, and then go from the theater somewhere else, and then come back again. So it's not only that I'm only performing in the black boxes, because as now is that, but maybe all the world's just like a stage, and I'm always performing, and this is really crucial to understand that.
Thank you. We are getting close to the end. I'm sorry we can't take any more, but yeah. Where? Okay. So, can you make it? Huh? Okay.
Yeah, but let's stop.
Okay. We are 10 minutes over. Okay. So just leave the ones that want to leave for lunch. You have my allowance to leave. And we're going to make the two last remarks here. Would you send the mic up, please?
I was just going to say, we all laugh when Ville says, I'm not going to fail. And I find this interesting because we talk so much about not being afraid to fail, but I find it in education much more inspiring when people say, don't be afraid to succeed, and don't be afraid to do your thing there.
you know, because the focus on failing means you're thinking about failing. And if you're not afraid, if you go out and think that I'm not afraid to succeed, to be interesting, then things also will happen.
I just want to say that when people, teachers or everyone talks about failing, oh, you should just fail. I always wonder, what is that? Because for me, it sounds like a positive voted word in this context. But like you jump into something and then you fail, and then there's a rainbow on the other side. Ah, that's where art comes. But for me, I'm afraid of jumping into something, failing, and just failing. And that feels not good. And we are being watched because we're in school. And also the audience coming in, I think that's a positive thing, because I learn a lot from that, even though it's scary. But I think it's important to call it what it is and say, like here, we say, oh, you shouldn't call it a show. Like, we're not giving a show to the public, we're just having an open class. It doesn't feel like an open class, it feels like a show. And I think communication is very important. What is failure? And what is the public? What are we sharing? I think that's important.
Thank you. Since this is Tore's only day in the panel, I'm going to give him the last word, if he wants it, to reply on some thoughts or some ideas to wrap it up.
Now, you know, well, I think it's been a very productive discussion. And I really think that also these kinds of discussions, I know some of you hate that I'm saying this, but to be aware of the structure, but it's also to deal with the structure. Well, at least it's a starting point. And I think one of the worst things is that you have a lot of forces working on you, but you have no idea what is going on. So that's at least a starting point. It's not enough, but it's a starting point.
Thank you all for a long debate. See you again tomorrow, and then we have Ville. Right?